The next interview is with Gilbert Record.
Hello, this is Wendy Bennett here with Gilbert Record on Friday, May 24th, 2013. Welcome, Gil.
Thank you.
So, Gil, could you start by telling us your full name?
Gilbert Lloyd Record.
And when and where were you born?
Southside Hospital in Bayshore, March 17th, 1934.
And what town did you first live in when you were born?
Sayville.
And throughout your life, what towns have you lived in?
Well, around here, Sayville, Bayport, and Patchogue, but I've lived in other places, in other states.
And how long have you been in Bayport?
This time since a homeowner, since 1979, January 79.
And what high school did you attend?
Sayville.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the jobs that you have had.
Well, I was in the Army, and I was a probation officer, and I'm a lawyer by education, although I never really worked that much at it, and a school teacher.
And where were you a school teacher?
West Babylon, New York.
And I know you were married. How did you meet and marry your spouse?
At West Babylon.
Was she a teacher as well?
She was a school nurse.
So thinking about big events that have happened through the years in Bayport, like wars, big storms, what have you, can you remember anything specific and how it impacted Bayport?
Well, the 1938 hurricane, I was in Bayport, and that was the first thing that I really remember. I was 4 years old, and the only reason I think I remember it is because it was so huge.
Do you have any specific memories about it?
Huge trees coming down all around and being afraid it was going to fall on my grandmother's house. They were going to fall on my grandmother's house.
Did anything happen to the house?
No, but it seemed like every other tree in the woods went down. But no, she was very lucky.
So when you were growing up, were there any summer activities that you remember taking part in?
We always went to the Shoreham every summer. That was a beach club at the end of Foster Avenue in Sayville, where an awful lot of Bayport and Sayville people went.
And what did you do there?
Swim in the bay.
Was it crowded?
Yes.
Do you remember listening to any type of music?
Slow music.
Slow music?
Before rock and roll took over.
Okay, so now let's focus on living in Bayport. Now, you said the hurricane of 1938 was one of your earliest memories. Can you think of any other early memories of living in Bayport?
VJ Day in August of 45. Well, an awful lot of people from Bayport came down into the village, which was then down on Middle Road. Stores were there and everything. And everybody just yelling and whooping it up and having a grand time of celebration.
Can you describe what it was like when you first moved to Bayport?
Well, I've always been very close to Bayport, which at that time was all down on Middle Road, and the post office was in a house across from Shan's store. Shan's store is also gone now. And there was also an IGA store, and West's had a meat market in the village. And Mantha's Garage was there. That was a big undertaking. And they had a very good pharmacy.
Are any of those places that you mentioned still here?
Some of the buildings are, but no, none of those things are in them anymore. None of those establishments.
Besides the stores that you just mentioned, what other places stand out the most in your mind in Bayport?
The Manhattan House, that was down on Middle Road also in the village.
And what was the Manhattan House?
It was a hotel and a rooming house later.
Can you describe what it looked like?
It was a big old hotel from the 1890s or around then. And it had all the accoutrements from those days and was an interesting place to go to. I don't remember when it came down, but I know in the 60s it was still there.
And other than going to the beach and swimming, what else did you do for fun when you were growing up?
Went into Ebbets Field, see the Dodgers.
And where was Ebbets Field?
Brooklyn.
Ebbets Field. Were you on any sports teams in high school?
Yeah, football.
So thinking about Bayport and Sayville when you were growing up, What do you think was most important to people of that community?
I guess making a living. They're both pretty small town.
Did you like that small town feeling?
Yeah, I still don't care that much for the city.
And do you know what residents of Bayport did for a living while you were growing up?
There were still some farms around then when I was a young kid. But basically everybody worked at in stores, or my father worked in the courts.
In Riverhead or somewhere else?
In Riverhead, yeah.
One question I meant to ask you before, how did your family come to live in Bayport?
Well, my mother was from Bayport, and my father was from Islip.
Do you remember the local Bayport Railroad station?
Oh, yeah. It had some nice old overstuffed furniture in it and a wood-burning stove.
Did you ever take the train out of there?
I don't think so, out of Sayville many times. Sayville had a more modern railroad station.
Do you remember when the Bayport station closed?
I do, but I don't have the faintest idea what year it would have been. It would have been in the 50s or the 60s, I guess.
So now let's talk about the library for a minute. What are your memories of the library when you were growing up?
I was never in the Bayport Library until I moved to Bayport in 1979. And I ran for the board, I think, in 1980. And I'm not sure I believe I was elected at that time, and I was on the board till about 92 or 93. I had the 3 5-year terms.
What made you want to be on the board for the library?
Well, I've always been interested in reading and in libraries, and I was on the board in Sayville before that.
And how was your experience being on the board? Talk to us a little about that.
I've always enjoyed being on the library board because it has to do with books and interesting people, and it wasn't a dog-eat-dog situation then. Everybody got along well with everybody, and everybody was on the library board as long as they felt like it.
Did you use the library too
All the
during
time.
that time?
All the time.
Can you tell me a difference between when you first started coming to the library here and today? What is the big difference between the times?
No, not that much that I've noticed, but I know that behind the scenes there's been a lot of work done with so many more books and things running out of room and things being changed around. And we did put an addition on when I was on the board. I think that was in 90 or 92. And other than that, I think that they're going to have to get a bigger library in Bayport sooner or later.
Now, that addition that was put on in around 1992, that was for the meeting room for the library, and what else? Do you remember?
It went from, I think this room was here, but I couldn't swear to that either. But it went from about the reference desk back, roughly. And I don't know if they did anything to the room, to the, what's the room called where we are?
Technical services.
Yeah, I don't know whether technical services, anything was done to that or not. I just don't remember. I was never back there that much.
They probably added the whole area.
That's probably true, yeah. But I really remember, of course, is the meeting rooms.
Thinking about Bayport and Blue Point as a whole, what would you say is the biggest change that you've seen in these communities over the years?
Bayport Village being gone, and the farms up at the north end here along the Montauk Highway, there used to be so many farms and florists and stuff like that, and so many of them have gone. Although there's still the Bayport flower houses left.
This may be an obvious question, but what do you think brought about these changes?
More people, population expansion.
And Gil, what do you miss the most about the way it used to be?
I suppose people would say it's still small town, but I mean, it was really small town then, and I enjoyed growing up in it. I don't think Sayville had 5,000 people when I was first there. I certainly knew everybody in town, in both towns. And that isn't that way anymore at all.
So we've come almost to the end of our time, but is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you would like to talk about? Any additional memories?
Well, we had Merle Johnson, who was Troy Donahue, the actor, and I went to school with him. He went to Bayport, I went to Sayville, but we were friendly. And after the Second World War, we played guns. And then in high school, got separated. And in the last year of high school, they sent him to military academy to raise his grades. And then he went off and was a movie star.
Oh, wow.
Didn't you never heard of him?
No.
No, he was big. He was in with Sandra Dee and Susan Plachette. He was in a movie with Rosanna Brazzi.
What movies were he in? Do you remember the titles of any?
No, but one of them was close. Beach Blanket, blah, 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 I don't know. But then he was in one or two good ones, and then he, the way I understand it, got mixed up with drinking really badly, and then he didn't make a movie again for, 15 or 20 years or something, and I saw him in a movie in the early 80s, I guess it would be, where he was an assistant principal of a high school, and looking for kids in the bathroom who would all lock themselves in and were standing on the toilets. That's the last movie I ever saw him in.
What was he like when you knew him?
Very nice. Nice kid. Just like everybody else.
Now, you said you played guns with him. What does that mean?
We played war after the Second World War.
Ah.
And Bayport had a lot of open space up north, and all kinds of kids used to come. You'd get a couple dozen kids playing guns or playing World War II.
All right. Anything else?
The Sugar Bowl, there was a place called the Sugar Bowl, which was, I think, roughly where that Bayport-Blue Point Animal Hospital is on the corner of Montauk Highway and First Avenue or Second Avenue or something. And that did a tremendous business. That was to Bayport what Beers was to Sayville. And I never remember any trouble or anything in there, but it was packed with all kinds of kids.
So was it a restaurant or?
It was more or less an ice cream place.
I heard a lot of people went dancing there too.
That would have
right?
been after my time.
And how often did you go to the Sugar Bowl?
Probably once a week.
Do you remember what it was like inside?
I remember there being a counter and tables, of course, and a lot of room, which I guess became a dance floor later, but I don't think anybody danced there when I was going there.
All right. Well, I guess this is the end of our interview. Gil, thank you very much for sharing your memories.
This marks the end of the interview for Gilbert Record.